Hey, what's up guys, it's Oakley, and we are going to be in Empire. I am playing as Russia out here in the winter lands in the deep dark forest. My opponent is actually going to be a Swedish army. You can see him over there in the distance. So my opponent was the one hosting this battle. I'd never played on this map before, didn't know it was quite this forested. So this is going to be a different battle than most Empire ones where, yeah, maybe there's a little bit of terrain, but usually it's going to be a lot of line battles. This battle is going to be a little bit different in the sense that there's going to be a lot of fighting in the woods, a lot of chance for ambushes and things of that nature. There was also a rule or a series of rules placed on the battle itself. The first was no artillery, the second was maximum 4 light troops. So I decided, because I knew it was some sort of forest, to ditch one of the light infantry and just go for 3 light infantry, and in exchange bring a couple more infantry units. So my force, while I'm bringing the Russians, on the left flank I'm pushing up with some, I was going to say elite, but no, they were kind of run-of-the-mill, relatively cheap Siberian skirmishers. I think they do pretty well in such conditions. So yeah, they're slowly moving up. They're going to be screening my force as I start to look for these Swedes in the forest. Backing them up are going to be some Cossack infantry, 2 units. One is going to be holding down the left flank. The other is going to be pushing up on the right of this kind of little group here. And then I also have Cossack cavalry to back them up. These guys, I believe, are mounted forces that can also fire at the same time. So a nice little kind of Cossack cluster on this front. A little bit thematic here. Yeah, they're moving forward very slowly because I wasn't quite sure where my opponent was gonna show up. The only unit that you can see in such situations is going to be the enemy general, so he is the only one that I can really get a sense of where the opponent is. The general is moving towards me, so I assume that he has some units guarding him, as well as the potential for some units hiding on the flank, so that's why I'm slowly moving forward with my screening troops. So we went over my flank force here. In the center, I have more light infantry, 4 of these guys pushing up, and then a standard rifleman unit. He's going to be sitting here in the open ground just because I want him to keep his eyes open, but it is eerily quiet out here. I'm putting him with a big sight line just to suppress whatever might be running out of the forest. Now in the back I have one of my Siemnovsky foot guards. Gonna put them back in the woods to keep them hidden. And then I have my general's bodyguard. I also have a little bit of a hidden flanking force here. 3 more Siemnovsky foot guards. These are the most expensive of the Russian forces. And so I'm keeping my elite units in the rear, as well as 2 Cossack Ataman cavalry. So these are melee cavalry, still light but pretty decent. And yeah, my main objective was, hey, let's push through the forest, let's see where the first encounter takes place. So I'm moving forward carefully, and then essentially what I'm trying to do is push on this flank, form a defensive wall, and then bait my opponent to charge to the right and have him run straight into my units here. That's a kind of like a shifted battle line trap that I've used previously. So again, I'm going to use it and we'll see what effect it has. Meanwhile, the opponent has started to reveal his hand. He has some light dragoons, 2 of them being revealed, although as you'll see later, he has more of them. So my opponent is going to be a very coy Swede. That is kind of the theme of this battle, playing very delicately and deliberately. It kind of reminds me, I guess, thematically of the Great Northern War with the Swedish forces against kind of their neighbors, including Russia, I believe, with a lot of, you would assume, tactics like this, being very slow, methodical in your approach. But essentially what my opponent's doing is he's going to be also scouting my guys. A fair amount of my troops, once they go stationary, are going to go back to being hidden. That's the key. When you see them crouch down, that means they're hidden. So he has his own scouting forces. But it looks like my trap is going to work just right. This is going to be an important little moment here. So another thing you can do also is if your opponent suspects a trap here, what you can do is you can do a fake out. So that's exactly what I'm doing here. So I'm pulling out with one of my hidden forces, and then I'm running with all haste back to my main line. What I'm trying to telegraph to my opponent is, hey, I used to have an ambush here, but I got scared by your overwhelming numbers, and now I've pulled out my ambush. So in his mind, you know, he thinks, oh, okay, I've discovered the first ambush. Little does he know, I actually kept even more troops hidden back there. So I did a little number here. So you can see in his field of view, all he has to contend with is this line infantry force, and then the flanking force has pulled back. So, yeah. That's a little bit of a dirty trick that you can pull there. Now, if this were a future Total War title, I would move up these Sivnovsky Guard closer to my opponent. But in Empire Total War, if you move hidden units at all, even if they're in the woods, they will be revealed. There's no moving while sneaking, unfortunately. Otherwise, I would get the total drop on these guys. I would move into position behind them, turn off fire wheel, and then close in on them. Another thing that's happening here is I've kind of spooked my opponent by moving up my line troops. So I don't want him to get spooked off. I definitely want him to run into my Semnovsky Guard, get pulled out to the point where I can trap them. So I'm going to pull out with my line infantry and continue this shifted battle line approach. I've swept all the way up until the red line here. A couple places were missed, but I assume my opponent isn't there. If he is, he would be very crafty. But now I'm going to move him forward. My Siberian Hunter is starting to push up. So now you can see there's only, this remaining cluster of woods. And here it goes. My opponent pushing forward. And now he's going to get shot up by the Semnovsky Guard over there. His cavalry is caught unawares. It's going to charge forward, thinking that, oh, fuck, it's been caught. And now here I'm going to charge out with my Cossack Ataman cavalry. The problem there is that they are moving through kind of mixed terrain. And so his light dragoons, who are quick, are going to be able to get out of here. I do charge in with my infantry to try and close the trap, but I sprung it a bit too soon. I should have put these guys on hold fire. Should have waited for him to be drawn out a little bit further. But in this case, it looks like he did evade me, taking 7 losses. Meanwhile, up through the center, my opponent has revealed 2 more hidden light dragoons. They came up and shot my Siberian Hunters and then have retreated. Although they did take a fair beating on one of them, my line infantry trading pretty decently with them. And I'm starting to catch up with the rear of his light dragoons. All of my units are swarming in close pursuit, so the noose is tightening on my opponent. But now I see the first of the enemy infantry. These are going to be Swedish riflemen. Pretty good units with only 78 men, and here we go, the rest of the force. They're going to be unloading on my light infantry. There's a fair amount of distance here, to the point where it's not going to do that much damage to me. But I have to slow my roll a little bit because he's starting to get into close support of his units, and I assume this is where the army is hidden. I started to exchange some fire with these rifles, but my opponent, being very coy, once again is going to pull back even further. So I'm a little bit wary here. Now I'm like, okay, I've run into the main Swedish army. It's somewhere back here. And I can't charge at these rifles straight up. I have to hit them on the flank. And he's doing a lot of this fire and retreat, which is going to start to annoy me. In any case, my rifles are going to unload on these moving targets. So he can do a bit of that shuffle. At least he's only shooting at the Siberian Hunters, and my own riflemen here are going to be pretty powerful. He has his cav sitting stationary. He's going to get some free shots into the Siberians there. But I counter fire, and so his delaying tactics are doing okay. But if I can nerf his cavalry early on, that'll be a big boon to me. Anyways, I'm going to start to move up. I'm feigning a charge with my Ataman cavalry because I saw that his riflemen had fired, and so I'm going to try and get in here. I'm also scoping out the terrain, and I really want to get in and see what's going on. However, he does have light dragoons who can come back and chase me off, so I'm a little bit wary of getting too caught into the muck here. Once these forces wheel about, they can get me, but I figured it was a pretty good prize to try and hit these riflemen if I could. And so I'm closing in with what I consider to be somewhat disposable cav, but for some reason they're going very, very slow. You'd figure on the open ground here I would be able to cleave through these guys. Meanwhile, I'm closing in with my own Cossack cavalry. They're firing into his light dragoon, so at least I've got this flank wrapped up. I'm chasing after his general, starting to do some damage and starting to wrap this up. Meanwhile, his dragoons are going to try and pivot about, but the more they engage, the more I'm going to be able to move up my line and fire into them. So things are going okay. I'm sacrificing a lot of my cavalry here, but I figure it's a worthy cause to try and nab his riflemen, and then also stick it to his 2 light dragoons. So if I can trade 2 cavalry to get some of his rifles and 2 more of his cavalry, I'll consider that a fair trade. But my question is, where is he retreating to? Where is the rest of this force? This can't be all of it. And so I'm getting a little bit impetuous in my chase, which is exactly what my opponent wants. Here he fires blank into my guys, does some pretty good damage before my infantry to come in and save the day. And I'm starting to get my lines up. These rifles are reforming. They're going to fire, covering fire into here, so my cavalry is going to be done away with. But not before I get another point-blank volley into his guys. So his units have taken a beating, but he still has 4 of those light dragoons alive. I'm pushing around the flank with my Cossacks to try and nab his units, but I'm losing my close support. Infantry is slowly trying to push up. I'm coming in with everything to hit his riflemen before they reload. And it's at this point that I get a charge in, and now, let's put this on slow motion. Now it is revealed what the enemy's ploy was. He's got a bunch of superior line and lifeguard foot, very, very elite core of forces. So his entire strategy this battle was to scout with light dragoons, fire away at me, and you could see these riflemen, they were up here initially. Fire, retreat, fire, retreat, fire, retreat, fire, retreat, fire, retreat. The entire battle until he pulls back to his dense infantry blob. At this point, my pursuit is very disorganized, and now I'm faced 2 Semnovsky Guard against 3 line infantry. This is not going to go well. I've stumbled into a big force with still some units in the back slowly pulling up. It's a pretty decent strategy from my opponent's side, if a little bit ungentlemanly in the sense that he chose this map. He set up a forested fight and just sat back and baited me into this. I mean, this is not I would do this historically, but in terms of gameplay, it seems kind of cowardly, and it's too cautious in terms of like really wanting that win. But anyways, I'm gonna start to trade with these lifeguard afoot. But one of the things you'll notice here is my opponent seems to have been playing Empire a lot, and I guess what he's doing is he's forming up with dense blobs, especially with a superior line of foot. The way they're firing, this is actually very fire effective. He's got a lot of units here continuing to fire straight into my guys. My Semnovsky Lifeguard in standard line formation here don't have the sheer density of firepower, so I'm quickly going to realize, holy crap, I'm going to lose this. You can see when these ranks fire, it looks like it's about, yeah, it's the entire rank. So with elite units like this, I guess the strategy is to form many ranks deep, whereas with typical line infantry, you can only fire with the first couple ranks, and in those cases, you know, the most effective line is 3 or 4 men deep. But with the elite units, go as deep as you want with that fire by platoon, I guess. Much more effective. So, holy shit, I took a big beating there. Semnovsky down to 64 men, so I figured, hey, if I'm going to win this, I have to use my range to my advantage. So that is going to be, it's my turn to be coy now. So just as he starts to pursue, I'm going to fire with my rifles and then pull back. Just let him get into range. Same thing is going to be occurring over here. My Siberian forces and other units firing straight into his line troops. And then if he wants to move forward and advance, well, I'm going to give him a taste of his own medicine and pull out of that engagement, because I need to recoup from my losses of blundering into his main force. He also still has a pretty big core of these light dragoons, all 4 of them, whereas my cavalry has been mostly wasted trying to chase down his skirmishers to not much effect, so I was a little bit pissed off about how that exchange went. In any case here, he's again being very wary, not willing to engage me in the open ground here because I had a flank turned on him, and so he's going to pull out of there. And I guess allow his rifles to start to get some shots off. He's going to be a bit clumsy with his dragoons and allow me to fire into them. I'm going to reform with more Cossack infantry and line troops to hit them on the flank. Meanwhile, in the center, I'm going to continue to pick away at his guys. My opponent continues to pull back, daring me to run into him. I'm going to give chase to his light dragoons. My opponent doesn't really seem willing to engage them, and I know in the woods here they're not going to be very effective. So you can watch the next stages of the fight here. I'm slowly going to move up, making sure to screen with my Siberian hunters and skirmishers. And I know all his skirmishers are here, so that's fine. I'm just not going to engage there. I'm going to move around the left flank. Meanwhile, over here, I'm giving chase against his cavalry. His skirmishers do want to engage with me, so I'm saying, fine, I will fight you with my Siberian hunters firing from the woods. Trading will be okay. His cav does fire, but I am essentially going to rout one of them. There he goes off the battlefield. So, yeah, slowly he's whittling away my infantry, but I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to do a big charge up the line to try and get at him, but again, my opponent being very skittish, not allowing me to charge into his guys. So that's fine. I'm just going to force him to yield this terrain and then seize the at least the forest here and slowly force him back. Cavalry's going to reform here, but at any point in time, that's fine. I'm just going to pull up with my Siberian hunters and ranged units and wait him out. In the center, Siberian hunters are also pushed up in a position where I can try and hold the line. The rest of my forces are going to pull up, and then knowing that my opponent is going to continue to retreat, I'm going to try and seize the flank so that if at any point he tries to escape from this bottleneck, I'll have the flank secured. So riflemen are getting into position, as well as some minor infantry, and then the rest of the forces are going to start to move up. So, yeah. That's essentially how this is going to go. I'm also seeing that my opponent here believes he has line of sight, but most of the shots are actually going to fire into the ground. This is one of the things that I kind of appreciate from Empire and Napoleon, is you can get in situations where your units are going to fire into the ground like this. And if your opponent is making a mistake, it's often best to not interrupt them. So I'm going to allow him to just fire and waste shots into the ground here. Yes, a couple of those shots are going to hit some of my Cossacks, but I'm in the woods, and those are few and far between. Meanwhile, I'm going to use a little bit of the kind of cover of the hill here to continue to push left. Unfortunately, my Siberian Hunters are very tired, which means they're very, very slow, and Empire tired units moved incredibly slow. It's pretty frustrating. And then I'm going to start to push up en masse to try and hit his guys. I see that his line units are pushing back, mostly because I got into the flank and was firing into his units here. He's going to pivot about and start to do some good fire. My line infantry is going to hold for the time being. Get some nice shots off against his superior line. Pull back with my rifles because I know I need those long term. And then once I got my volley off, disengage and just allow myself to move up on the flank. So at any point in time, I'm going to trade just initially, pull out, and then try and get the better engagement. Again, on this front, I'm going to be forced to pursue, and my opponent is going to be forced to retreat. I don't even think if I had my cavalry alive I could chase those guys because of how slow they were proving to be in the woods. So pretty pissed at how my opponent's handling this retreat. But yep, I was guessing that he would try and sneak out the back. So I'm going to try and hem this off. But now, finally, his retreating tactics can only take him so far. He's up against the red line. But then again, that is kind of to his advantage in the sense that these superior line infantry and guards, yeah, they will chew through my line if I try and engage. So I'm going to try and win the fight for the flanks. So that fight is going to be taking place here. My opponent recognizes that that is where the fight is happening. So unfortunately, he's going to force the breach here and get his cav out of this position, out of this bottleneck that I have. My units are going to continue to try and turn the flank, firing into his lifeguard, causing my opponent to waste units, but I can't hold the hill. I'm going to have to pull back. So he's getting a bit of a breakout, but whatever forces he does break out means that this side is weak, and that's why pretty soon I'm going to try and push up and engage with these forces. I see that his flank is turned. His guys are retreating to support that main line. That's my cue to come in pursuit in earnest. I really want to charge into these guys. My Cossacks just tie them down, get them to rout right at the red line. My opponent is going to do everything he can to pull out and really force me away. He's going to reform here as I close in. I'm getting some nice flanking shots. Again, look at my caution here. He's formed up with this big, beefy line that I know is very devastating. I pull out from the front. Gonna wait for my Siberian Hunters to just chip away at this, and then let my units on the flank do the killing. This is one of the things, if you get in these situations, is just don't take unnecessary losses. Play the game that your opponent is playing. Just whittle him away. Get some shots on here. The second he does a move to counteract you, keep an eye on these forces and be ready to pull out. So he is charging to hit my guys, and that's exactly where I'm going to pull out. And then my guys here are going to come back to hit his units on the side. So I got my free shots, did a lot of damage to his line troops, and then just as his guys are going to try and fire into me, it does, yeah, 2-3 kills, and that's it. And then I pull out. Meanwhile, on this front, my Cossacks are forced to beat back the retreat. Again, didn't do too much damage, but his rifles are tired, and I have a lot of units starting to mass here. So I'm slowly pulling him out of position. His superior line infantry is going to try and deal with my Semnovsky foot guard. I'm pretty happy to engage here. I'm going to pull up on the flank. He has 3 units. I have 1 unit here and 2 more, plus some reinforcements that can come in. I'm relatively happy with that exchange, and then I'm going to bring in some rifles as well. Actually, when I said I was happy about that, I wasn't exactly the happiest. I figured, you know, he's going to start to do unnecessary damage, so might as well let my rifles trade. On this front, I will let my light infantry trade because I'm just firing 1v1 and I have more numbers. So I'm going to allow my first couple volleys to get off here. Fire those 3. And then I think once that's done, what I should be doing here is swapping out this unit for a fresh unit that can start to get fire. On this front, again, dense formation, just allowing my skirmishers to start to pick them apart. It's going to force my opponent back. And yeah, still cavalry holding the flank. These are going to be essentially holding the door holding the door open for my opponent's eventual possible retreat avenue out here. But I feel like I'm trading pretty well. Here comes his big line push against my guys. I was trying to capitalize on his retreat here, but I'm going to get a little bit too close. Against the sheer firepower density here is going to be pretty overwhelming. And I try and pull out here. My guys are running, but again, like I said, when you're exhausted, literally the slowest I've ever seen units move in Total War. So my guys are pulling out of there before he gets too many shots off, hopefully. But yeah, look at this. The concentrated fire, the platoon fire in depth like this, where everything is shooting. Like I said, it's like a machine gun for Empire. And that shatters my Siberian Hunters. Cossacks still under fire, but that's okay. Over on this front, Lines are going to try and trade with his units. Not super happy about this. I have pretty decent numbers. He has 3 units shooting at me. I have 1, 2, 3, and a 4th. So I think I should trade okay. I just have to secure my back. So the Light Dragoons are hoping to move around and get a strike at my rear. I'm getting a little bit of a problem here with my skirmishers trying to shoot over my heads, hitting a couple of my guys. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pretend that I'm moving forward, but I'm actually going to reposition them to face backwards. This isn't entirely obvious, so from my opponent's perspective, he may still think I'm shooting this way, but actually I've turned them about to fire into his cav. Same with this guy here. He's held to shoot in the back, and I'm going to turn another Semnovsky foot guard to fire in the rear. My opponent saw that he was at a disadvantage here with my skirmishers firing, and he's going to pull out. I'm going to continue to press the advantage, try and fire into his rifles, and just, yeah, keep pulling up. And then meanwhile, my Cossacks are going to pull around the right flank. But at this point, like I said, I'm getting a bit tired of his annoying tactics here, where he continues to just deny any sort of battle. Even if he does have an advantage, he's just going to pull out. And look at this. That's absurd. Did you see that? A unit deployed in column, essentially the entire length of it was firing. That's a little glitch I got to learn to exploit. But anyways, I see that he's in full-on retreat. Nothing here is in supporting fire. So I figured, okay, 2 units, Cossack infantry and line infantry, please charge into these tired rifles and get them off the screen. Chase them off the map. And we'll see if this works. You know, his cavalry is skirting around the rear, but that's okay. I've turned around my line, and they're going to be in rear guard firing into his units. They did shoot into my Cossacks, so they're going to be seen off, but they weren't really useful. Anyways, I continue to charge. His riflemen are going to pull out, and the entire army here is pulling out. I recognize that he's always going to be seeking a retreat, so my light infantry pulled up here and is just firing, getting some free shots, and the remainder of my troops are told to double time to cut him off. So we'll see where this will go. Meanwhile, my light infantry firing into his light dragoons managed to shatter one of them. The other 2 are going to retreat. So I feel like I have the situation in the rear covered. The rest of my guys are going to continue to pull up, as well as my general, who needs to stay away from these light dragoons who would love to shark him. Meanwhile, I've caught my enemy general's bodyguard. So what I'm going to do is try and form up. My Siberian Hunters were firing into him. One of my line infantry here is almost able to shatter the general. He's wavering. I was really hoping to go after these rifles, but take a look at this superior line infantry. Formed up in this formation. I'm on the flank, and still I believe he's going to be able to fire into me. Look at those shots. Everyone is firing. Lots of damage being dealt to my Cossack infantry. Everyone who's trying to come up and kill this general's bodyguard. So yeah, it's a pretty dense blob. But in any case, my line infantry do get into these very tired riflemen. Looking like I'm going to shatter one of them, but that last volley that he got killed a lot of my men. And unfortunately, my guys are broken. So I was pretty pissed at that the riflemen were able to kill me. I was really hoping to turn the tide. And look at that. He can pivot these columns around. And look, God, so efficient. I know I'm griping a lot about this, but I guess it's like an exploit that I wasn't familiar with before this battle, and it's proving to be very effective and kind of hard to counter. Anyways, he's very dense, forming up, and again, you know, if I can't win this engagement, I'm going to put my skirmishers up here. I figured I'd get a little bit of cover in this position to fire into his guys, but the amount of damage he puts into me here with, you know, 4 units firing plus these 2 platoons, I just take so much damage that I have to pull out. This is not the place I want to engage. Where I want to engage is going to be around the flank. He's got 4 isolated units here, and so I'm going to continue to try and push and get the envelopment on his guys. Unfortunately, my Siberian Hunters are going to be shattered. That was my ranged advantage there, and yeah, that's bad for me. All I have left here is going to be a Semnovsky Guard, a line infantry, and a Cossack infantry against his 3 elites. He's going to trade, and he should beat me. So that means on this side, the advantage is his. On this flank, I only have a couple units. Luckily, I do have my rifles, so I can start to pick away at his guys. And finally, I think I've closed in on him. Sealed the noose. Secured the noose, I should say. and gotten on his flank. My opponent, again, realizes this. He's going to try and force me back, and his rifles are going to try and pick me away. But that's okay. I'm just going to pull over here, and now that he's exposed himself a little bit, I'm going to try and fire. But again, I've fallen for a little bit of the problem where it looks like I'm firing if you're overhead, but if you look real close, just a couple of those shots are connecting. So for the most part, I'm missing. And now look at this. I got a nice little wedge on the flank of his guys. And so I pull up with my line infantry to try and fire into the flank and kill these guys. His units are retreating. That's my cue to move up. But again, my opponent being pretty cowardly, not even deciding to engage here. And so I'm going to get some free shots. He's only got a couple guys left and is continuing to step back. And at least now, he stepped back to the point where he's in the forest. So I'm pretty happy about that. But if he can reform with the entirety of his force and fire straight into my guys, I'm pretty much dead. There's so much firepower that we've seen before. It's crushing. So I decide, hey, I'm not going to take that fight. I got my couple volleys, and I'm going to retreat back behind the lip of the hill. And then I'm going to push the advantage here with my Semnovsky Guard and try and fire away. Same thing goes with my rifles up on the hill. I'm going to start to pick away at some of his rifles here, and then slowly start to move my way down the line. Hopefully I can even land some shots against his general's bodyguard. And yep, reposition, pull out. Don't take unnecessary losses. Meanwhile here, I've left my guys because you can see these units are firing, but none of their shots are connecting. They're getting clipped on this section of the hill, so that's why I'm leaving these guys here, because they're trading essentially just against these units here. They're going to be firing into this force, keeping them fixed, allowing my rifles to fire. And I'm going to charge in with my Semnovsky Foot Guard. I figured I have the advantage here if I can move up with my line and really start to turn the flank. My opponent realizes he may need more reinforcements, pulls up with the riflemen, and we'll see how this goes. My Semnovsky are exposed, but they're elite troops, so I figure they can trade pretty good against this line infantry that's formed in too deep. And then with my line infantry on the flank, hopefully start to crack some of these guys. I'm going to try and focus fire with a lot of my units on the extreme superior line units. But I don't know what's happening here. I ran into a little glitch of sorts where my unit is not firing. I guess it was because one of my guys was still trailing. Now that he's here, I can fire straight into this superior line infantry, and it should be enough to break it. But now my opponent has brought about his rifles and can fire into me, as well as turning this column about and firing into my guys. So I've been forced to retreat once again. And the rifles in dense formation can still pack a punch. Tried to pull up with my Semnovsky Foot Guard to get a flank on his guys. My opponent is going to form about, again with these two dense formations, and unload. Look at that, the amount of firepower destroyed my Semnovsky Foot Guard. I would say that was a big risk. As I said on this side, my opponent has the advantage. If you have the advantage, or at least a balance, don't even think about trading. There was no advantage to be gained here. I should have just stayed in the back and helped cordon off my opponent. I don't expect a breakthrough to happen here, so I should have just kept my guys back and just continued to pick away at his flank where possible, which is exactly what I'm doing here, and then pull back on this side and just wait for the trades to happen. So that's kind of been my strategy. Meanwhile, in the rear, he does have his cavalry that are continuing to try and harass, but I've got line infantry that can pivot about and fire into them. So if they're not really getting too much done, they will wheel up and try and do a couple shots, but for the most part, it's wasted. So pretty happy with that. Opponent pulled back, and so we're now at a standstill. What I've done is I've pulled up with my rifles, and I believe, yeah, they're continuing to trade with his guys. Not much damage being done on either side, so I think I'm going to turn off their fire at will here soon, because I want to conserve ammo for the late game, because that's where we're headed. Anyways, my opponent tries to pull up with some lifeguard to fire into my units, and that's where I pull up with some of my own line infantry to fire into their flank. Or actually, sorry, no, they're forced to look into the rear, so that's a little bit of a problem for me. But yeah, shots still being blocked on this ridge. My guys here also firing back, so it's a standstill. But it was a good move to hold fire here because no advantage was to be gained, and my opponent is soon going to run out of ammo with his light troops. Sensing his retreat, I'm going to again try and move up with my line infantry to fire into this blob, and then I'm going to pull up with more guys, try and shoot into his dudes. We'll see how cost effective this trade is. The problem is he's got his cavalry in the back, so I'm going to have to pull out of this. His guys are going to start to shoot into me, but, you know, again, the terrain being as it is, not too many shots are going to connect, although this guy does get hit by 2 concentrated forces, taking unnecessary losses. Let's go ahead and fast forward. Yeah, apologies if it's a long battle, but I do think it is an interesting one. You don't get to see this cat and mouse too often. I think it's one of the things that you guys appreciate. Anyways, his superior line infantry is firing into my line infantry. Should be able to trade pretty decently. And the nice thing is I have some Noskis firing into the flank. His cavalry does a little bit of a firing squad into my rear. I do trade against him a little bit, but he's doing a nice little ping pong. On this front, focus fire with my rifles finally was able to kill some of his superior line infantry. My opponent tries to fire back. Again, these guys aren't being super effective. So my hope here is save my ammo, pick away at his elites, and then finally do a bum rush, knock these guys into the rear, and then hit these units in the back. So all I have to do is kind of bide my time. But if my opponent can be cost effective with his light dragoons and slowly pick apart my infantry, if I lose these guys, it's literally just, 3 units, then these forces can turn about and force me to retreat on this side. So it's a little bit of the dance that we're playing. Here comes a charge. Finally, one of the few times my opponent does charge forward at me. He's getting tired of my giving him a taste of his own medicine, and he's gonna just roll up and start firing. This is the moment I was scared of, so immediately I pull back. Can't engage in that type of fight, but I do have rifles on the flank. Concentrated fire can hit his line infantry. Meanwhile here, he's rolled up with 2 units, and I have my own 2 units. I feel like I should be able to win that engagement, and I also have some Novsky Guard who can turn on him. I'm pretty eager about how this will go. My general is coming back, running in the lines behind to try and get some close support. And ideally, get him around the flank and charge into these guys. Semnovsky Foot Guard here have an interesting choice to make. Do I go and hit his guys in the flank, or do I knock out the general? In my eyes, the prime target was the general. If I can get him to retreat, that'll be a morale blow across the battlefield. So I was targeting him first. We'll see if that is cost effective. Meanwhile, my Semnovsky here, we're down to 80 men. He had 137 and 79. That was not an engagement I would win. So I decided to charge in, figuring that the Russians are supposed to have bonuses for melee combat. And so I figured, hey, get in there and hold the line while I try and get my cavalry around the flank and infantry to hold the center. And what I was hoping to do is a big hammer and anvil on his elites, but my Semnovsky here just started wavering and routing way quicker than expected. In the meantime, the cavalry has come back into the rear. I'm forced to charge in with my cav before getting a proper strike. And so now these guys are going to shoot right into the rear of my infantry. That's going to be a big blow to them. So this is where things start to go downhill on this flank. My line infantry is going to start routing. All I have left is 1 Semnovsky Guard. So I say, fuck it. I'm going to charge in with my general and try and see off this unit here. The rifles are going to turn about and come to his rescue, pivoting about, and they're going to try and save him. So here comes my general, hoping to try and see off this Swedish general who's been so cautious. But with this close support, they're going to be able to start firing. Luckily, I do close the distance and clobber through here. So I'm going to tie them down. I was expecting all these life units to turn about and fire straight into my general to see him off. So that's why I'm charging in. Riflemen are going to skirt around the flank, and I'm just going to try and get them into melee to tie his forces down and get my life guard up close so I can move in with the rest and start shooting at his guys. In the back here, my Semnovsky are just gloriously holding out point blank against cavalry and infantry. Didn't want to stand here and get fired at, so I'm going to charge in with my Semnovsky Guard. And again, my opponent being so skittish here. This cavalry, just stick it out. Just stay in the fight and deal with me and charge in with melee. But no, he's doing everything for the win, pulling out there. And yeah. Meanwhile, my general who charged in here ended up being killed in the ensuing brawl. These Swedish riflemen are holding out pretty good, but I think I was able to kill the enemy general, or at least see him off. I don't see him on the battlefield anymore. I routed one of these line infantry with concentrated fire and rifles charging in. My general has rallied, so I'm actually pretty happy about how this is going. If I can clean up these rifles and then manage to disengage and just fire from a distance with my guys, I should be able to do pretty well. The problem is going to be with these elites on this flank who are getting shot at. So I do bring in some Semnovsky Guard to try and fire into the flank. Here's engagement in the back. My bodyguard down to 2 men. But my rifles with 27 men should be able to kill these riflemen with some support, I would hope. Yeah, they're stabilizing. That's pretty good. My guys pull up and they're going to fire some last parting shots into these superior line infantry. At least they should, hopefully before they reform. There you go. This is pretty good for me. I did shatter. Nope, you still got 3 of those guys, so both my men routing. I do get one of his lifeguards of foot off the battlefield. That's great with some focus fire. Next, I'm going to turn to focus fire on the other weak force. Try and just continue to knock them off the battlefield. Meanwhile, over here, I did charge in with some Sanovsky. They have been shattered by the combo of the 2 elite units plus light dragoons. I do still have a Cossack infantry who I'm going to pull back into the fight. But at this point, the balance bar is very much in my opponent's favor. Let's go ahead and fast forward this as I try and break the final units. Cavalry is going to charge into the rear. I decide, hey, let's get into melee, ward those guys off, and yeah, just go for the glorious charge. So there we go, charging into the enemy line, but that is going to be it. Cossacks in the rear also going to be charging in, hoping to get a little bit sandwiched. Finally, the cavalry does decide to charge in instead of firing and running away. And with that, my Russian army is going to melt. So that's it for that battle. I hope you guys enjoyed. Apologies for the kiting that was taking place. Well, I wasn't the one doing it, but I hope you still enjoyed it. It was a bit more of a tactical fight, and hopefully you can learn from my mistakes. Yeah. Let's go ahead and look at some of the stats here. So a lot of kills on my Sanovsky, traded pretty well. 163, 133. So overall doing pretty good. The main waste here seems to be some of my Siberians and light infantry. These were the guys who got caught in the initial ambush from my opponents. As well as some of my Cossack Ataman cavalry who tried to chase after those skirmishers. Actually, that's another mechanic from Empire I forgot because I haven't played this for a while, is cavalry can be super slow in the pursuit. In any other Total War game, these guys catching the enemy cav in the rear and also light infantry in the rear as they did would have completely decimated and routed them. Unfortunately, I didn't get those early wins, and my opponent was able to retreat with those rifles, and that was the key to his victory. In the late game there, if I had been able to knock out his rifles and keep my own, I would have just sat back and just shot his elites to pieces. So that's why the early game is very, very critical. You have to be careful about which units you're bringing into the late game. Different ones can have different effects on the battle. So that's it for the battle. Hope you guys enjoyed. Stay tuned for more, and see you in the next one. Peace out.